Welcome to Your Success Podcast. We give you actionable insight and stories behind real-life success wherever you go.
So, welcome to Your Success Podcast. I'm Angelos, and today I'm really pleased to be joined by Dianne Porchia. So, welcome, Dianne.
Thank you, Angelos. Such a pleasure to be speaking with you today.
Likewise. So, for those of you at home who aren't necessarily familiar who Dianne is the founder of W.I.S.H.â and Passing Performance, and is an expert in reducing stress and promotes whole, healthy living, which leads to a healthier body and a healthier mind. And recently starred in the hit documentary film Heal, which you can watch on Netflix. So I'm really pleased to have you with us today, Dianne, because I'd like to talk about the subject of stress and how that can really affect people in a very negative way, and some of the tools and techniques that you have created to help people overcome stress and lead a much healthier life in general. So we all lead stressful lives, I guess, to a certain extent, some more than others. Today's society constantly requires our attention, with our phones going off all the time, our businesses need us, or our bosses constantly putting new targets and stresses on our heads. So it's becoming more and more difficult to lead a balanced and relaxed life. So I guess my first question to you is, what impact does stress have on our bodies, our physical bodies, and what illnesses can it create?
Yeah. Well, stress, is built into our limbic brain for a reason. And we have a freeze, fight, or flight response that's built into our limbic brain. And that is meant, to save us in life-threatening situations. So it's when the adrenaline, the stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisols kick in to help us flee or fight, or freeze in a, life-threatening situation. One of the examples that I give, everyone talks about the tiger, being chased by the saber-toothed tiger. Or my personal reference is, I live in Topanga, California, which is Southern California, and it's a rural community, and every day I, would go mountain biking. And there was one day that I, mountain biked up to the top of the hill, and I find a place to sit on the ground and meditate. And so I'm sitting cross-legged on the ground, and when I'm done with my meditation, I reach up and stretch, and as soon as I moved my arms, I heard this, and it was a rattlesnake. I never saw the snake, but before I knew it, that freeze, fight, or flight mechanism had kicked in, and I had leapt up from a cross-legged position on the ground to a standing position away from the noise. So that's an example of how that autonomic nervous system that's hardwired in our limbic brain kicks in to save us in a life-threatening situation. When that situation, subsided, I realized I'm safe. I never saw the snake. But, my body was able to return back to homeostasis and balance again. I knew that I wasn't threatened. Now, if I had continued to perceive that that threatening situation as something that stuck with me as a big, trauma. And maybe I relived that situation over and over again and retold the story and got in touch with that fear, that initial fear, and that stayed with me. That could turn into like a long-term stress situation. And my nervous system, still remains on high alert. And that means that the extended period of stress is lasting much longer than it should, and the stress hormones are being secreted. So in chronic situations of stress, we will hold on to perceptions of a life-threatening situation for long periods of time, which means that those stress hormones are being secreted over a longer period of time, and in particular the cortisol, which suppresses immune function. Because when we're in that critical freeze, fight, or flight response mechanism, the blood flow to the forebrain, which is responsible for our critical thinking and logical thinking, is kind of cut off temporarily. And the blood flow is going to the hindbrain, which is critical for response of muscular response and fleeing and fighting, whatever we need to do in that moment. So, and our heart rate remains elevated. So, in a critical, situation, normally we want the body to go back to homeostasis, to balance. And with chronic stress, it doesn't. So, I had a business called Passing Performance before I was really focused on Porchia's W.I.S.H.â. W.I.S.H.â, by the way, is an acronym for the whole integrated self-health and its approach to healing, loving, and living consciously. A holistic approach. But Passing Performance was strictly focused on performance anxiety and people that were prone to panic attacks. And the population that I was working with were law students. So the California State Bar exam, which is the professional licensing exam for attorneys, which become an attorney, has the highest failure rate. They have a 50% failure rate. And it's a very tough bar. And so the students that I worked with suffered from performance anxiety or test stress, panic attacks. And even though they were really smart and they knew the information, because they perceived this test as something that was like really critical and threatening to their future. There's like so much money riding on this situation, the investment of time and finances into, law school, the expectations of family and friends, all of that kind of keys into or plays into this idea of, more stress that's added onto this, the student that wants to pass this exam. And so in a critical testing situation, this particular population would freeze and they would sit down for this exam, and sometimes they'd break out in a sweat, they'd get nauseous, their mind completely went blank, right? And that's all because of that freeze, fight, or flight mechanism. It had nothing to do with anything else. The heart palpitations, sometimes people think that they're having a heart attack when they get a panic attack.
So long term then, Porchia, if you're let's say you're a business owner, for example, and you have constant stresses, you're worrying over customers, you're worrying over suppliers, you're worrying over cash flow, whatever it is, and it goes on for years and years, maybe even decades. What does that physically do? What does all that cortisol swimming around your body, constantly just not being able to relax and go back to a normal state, what does that do to your body?
Yeah, so what it does, because you have that, the cortisols, the stress hormones that are slowly chipping away at the immune system over a long period of time, it makes the body more susceptible for all sorts of illness and diseases, including cancers. So, and, the door opener to my work is holistic stress reduction. And so there's a slew of illnesses and diseases that can set into weakened areas of the body because of a chronic stress situation, from heart disease to respiratory problems, autoimmune disorders, cancers. I was, working with my client in HEAL documentary that was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer, right? And as a result of the movie, I work with a lot more people diagnosed with cancers. Also people, autoimmune disorders. That's, precursor to something that can turn into something much more serious. So these type of disorders can happen when there's high levels of chronic stress in the body.
So I guess the most important thing that I could possibly ask you today is, how can your mindset help to reduce this level of stress? I know you've mentioned before the importance of learning new heart, soul-centered communication skills to help reduce these stresses and support the immune function, which you've mentioned can be compromised sometimes, and create and maintain a successful, loving relationship, if that's something that's on your mind, for example. So how can mindset help do this? How do you help people do this?
Yeah, well, when we're living in a state of fear of the unknown, fear of, going to happen in the future, regret of the past. These kind of low vibration emotions that are held in the body create a chronic internalized mental and emotional stress that creates that cortisol, that slow drip of the cortisol. So we want to change that. And you can't just, what I want to point out too is that people think that they can just start saying positive affirmations or positive self-talk, and that's going to get rid of their stress. But it really isn't. That's what I call the spiritual bypass. And it's never effective to do the spiritual bypass, because if you have a really loud inner saboteur voice that resides in the subconscious mind, and that voice says, believes, I'm not worthy, I'm not smart enough, I'm not lovable, whatever that inner saboteur voice says, it is not going to cooperate with a positive affirmation that says I'm wonderful. So before you can really effectively change a mindset, it's really essential to do the inner healing work. And that's what I focus on, is reaching and accessing those deeper levels of the heart and the soul and the subconscious level where that inner saboteur voice resides, where old past hurts and limiting beliefs reside. Maybe people are holding on to a lot of anger, resentment. Shame is like the lowest vibration energy. So the work that I do in the Heal documentary film, you saw my client doing sacred anger work. And that's a really powerful exercise that I facilitate my clients through. And that's moving that slow or that low vibration energy from the body. And that really, you can feel when you're holding on to stuff that's upsetting, right? Feel it in your chest. The example that I, would give, when I was married for 16 years and I went through a divorce and I had a lot of hurt and anger and stuff, and I felt this pit in my solar plexus, and it was filled with all this, this grief energy and anger and shame, all of that. And so my sacred anger work was to go mountain biking every day. And I would ride up to the top of the mountain and find a place to sit and do my prayers and meditation. And every day I'm pumping uphill and physically exerting myself and feeling that pit, that hole in my solar plexus that I knew I needed to empty out from the anger, the grief, the humiliation, all of that stuff. So I would allow myself to emote and yell and scream, cry, whatever I needed to do, and out in nature so I didn't run into anybody that thought I was a crazy woman. And it's such a powerful, moving meditation to do this, the sacred anger work. And so that emptied out. And pretty soon I experienced, what used to be a black hole in my solar plexus was now emptied out, and I had all this freed up space inside. And I knew that I had an opportunity then to fill that. And something that was important that I knew part of my healing process was to fill it with love and gratitude, right? And getting to that place of gratitude that, I was grateful that my husband actually divorced me, found another woman, and opened up my life to the healing path that I'm on now, that I've been doing since, the late 90s. And when you can get to that place of gratitude and overcome a big trauma or upset in your life, it's tremendous. It's a very deep healing.
Yeah, because ultimately, if you hold on to all these low vibrations, as you call them, or bad things that happened in your past, it occupies your mind bandwidth, right? So you're concentrating on these little things, and you may not be consciously thinking about them all the time, but it's just there in the background, niggling away. And like you say, the sense of forgiveness, a sense of gratitude, it can let go of these problems. And it can be the start of something really quite positive, because suddenly you can draw a line underneath all of these issues and move forward with your life. And like you said, allow the positive stuff to come into your life, as opposed to being occupied with things that happened in the past, which you probably don't have any more control over. So just let it go.
Yeah, and it's so important, and it can't be from the superficial level. Again, you have to really address those deeper levels of emotions that are residing in the subconscious and that inner saboteur voice. So any beliefs of guilt or shame or failure, like I know there are many people that go through a divorce and they want to hold on to the belief that it's somehow their fault, or they want to blame and judge the other person that it's their fault. And all that does is keep you chained to that low vibration energy, that mental, emotional stress and upset that is harming your own physical body. And I was aware of that. I knew I could feel in my body that upset, going through that period of divorce. And that's also, it's a natural thing that people go through. So when someone loses a loved one, you don't want to deny yourself feeling those emotions, because they don't go away. You have to address them. You have to face them and heal them on those deeper levels of the heart, the soul, and the subconscious level. Then you can truly move into that place of forgiveness and letting go, and moving into the wonderful space of gratitude and love and forgiveness.
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit later about what people can do, some quick fire tips on how to reduce levels of stress in their life. But just one little point there: if you don't let go of these issues in your life, you don't face them, you don't come out the other side, it's like holding a hot piece of coal.
Yeah.
Only you're the one who's going to get burnt, no one else. So you have to go through this process in order to allow yourself to heal. Otherwise, if it is a constant stress, a constant struggle in your own mind, you're only causing physical damage to yourself.
Exactly. And I also want to say that it's not, the work that I do, this holistic approach, is not the slow track of traditional therapy that takes years and years, and we don't wallow in the history and the past. We look at it, we move through it, and heal it really quickly, and get on with life. One of the things that was so frustrating for me, when I met my husband, who was in therapy for like 12 years of Gestalt therapy, and when we got together, we were in therapy together, and it's like there wasn't any movement. We were still stuck in, these old cycles of, blaming and miscommunicating, and it was crazy. And, so my experience of traditional therapy is that it's the slow track. What I've learned to do for myself, and what I know how to facilitate with my clients, is the fast track. So I see remarkable shifts, inner shifts and healings with people in, 2 or 3 sessions. It's, really tremendous and significant, healings. And so people describe this work as really the fast track, which is so great.
So can we talk about a couple of case studies that you've worked with people to help reduce their levels of stress and improve their health, ultimately heal them? That was the name of the documentary, Heal. That's what we're here to do, to try and help people, guide them to the right way to have a much better life. I know you mentioned the lady who had the cancer. Can you perhaps talk about her story and maybe one or two others that you've helped along the way, please?
Yeah, well, the woman in the documentary, Elizabeth, she's asked me not to share her story, but I can share that she, came, because she shared it in the movie, that she did come to me to kind of make peace with the idea of dying, because she thought that she was going to die from stage 4 colorectal cancer. And so you saw the results. She's still alive and thriving and really well. I've since worked with several other people with the same diagnosis, and one woman in particular, stage 4 colorectal cancer, And wow, in working with her, she got to that place of realizing and really embodying, and on the deepest level of her heart and soul, that she was pure love. And in an environment of pure love, that cancer could not exist. And this is a woman that was going through, let's see, I think by the time she came to me, she had already gone through a year of chemo and radiation. When the first day she came to see me, she had her mother drive her because she couldn't drive. She could barely walk up the stairs to see me. She was a mess. And, I think by our third session, she had shifted all of that and gotten to this place of deep healing and releasing. And, I have video of her that I'll be sharing in newsletters and stuff that, and she says in her own words, I just realized that I am pure love, and in this place of pure love, the energy of cancer cannot exist. And she's doing great now. She was near liver failure when she came to me. Now there's no evidence of any liver disease in her body either. And she's cancer-free after a stage 4 colorectal diagnosis. And to give back in gratitude, she's started a meetup group to teach people how to meditate, and support them through their process.
So is it truly mind over matter here?
It's more than that. It's soul healing. Like healing the soul at the deepest levels, and transforming that inner saboteur voice that once resided, that was very holding on to a lot of self-judgment and shame and blame and all of that, into a place of pure love and gratitude. So, and from that place, it's a total different shift in perception, shift in consciousness.
Yeah. So, like you say, a complete holistic approach as opposed to just little pieces. Just the real cause of things and healing from within. It's remarkable, and I'm always in awe of everyone that I get to work with, and I see what they look like and energetically feel like when I first start working with them, and I get to witness the shift that takes place and really rapidly. And I'm inspired by everyone. I just feel blessed to be able to facilitate this work. That's awesome. We're going to talk about a few of your workshops that you're holding fairly soon, in a short while. But can you give listeners and viewers at home maybe 2-3 quick things they can do on a day-by-day basis to try and reduce those levels of stress?
I think one of the most powerful things that people can do, and I tell them this all the time, I have a little slate that has these words on it, so it's there to remind everyone while we're working together, is in any given situation that comes up in your life, ask yourself, what is the most self-loving, self-nurturing, and self-honoring choice that I can make in this moment? Very simple. What is the most self-loving, self-nurturing, and self-honoring choice I can make? So many times we make choices because we're afraid. And most of the time, by the time we're 35 years of age, our conscious mind, our conscious mind represents 5% of how we make choices. Our subconscious mind, which is where all the protection mechanisms reside, is in charge of 95% of our choices that we make. And it's usually choices that we make out of fear. Fear of being rejected, fear of not being loved, fear of, not making money, fear of sky falling down, fear of just fear. And when we can get into that place of trusting, that's a key word, trusting that our life and our choices can support us. And if we just remind ourselves, what is resonating mostly in my heart right now? What is my heart telling me that it wants to do? Not always easy, because that voice of fear is really loud, and it's really, convincing, and it's been with you your whole life, probably from the age of 2 or 3. And, that's when in early childhood, we get that early childhood imprinting. And from the child's perspective, we're figuring out what's going to make us feel safe and secure in this adult world that we don't understand. And so we come up with survival mechanisms and coping strategies that really turn into limiting beliefs in so many ways and create blocks and barriers to the love that we want to experience, the connection, the fulfillment, the success, and that's where that inner saboteur voice gets developed early on.
And trying to reduce or minimize or get rid of even that fear-based making decision.
Yeah.
Because all those processes, all those thoughts, all those things you may think is coming from a position of positivity and love and hope and great plans for the future, but you have to maybe take a step back and think, why am I thinking like this? Why am I planning like this? Is it the right, are these thoughts coming from the right place? Or is it purely based on fear, lack of money, poor relationship, whatever it is, driving your decisions and making these choices for you? So that's an interesting thought that we can all take away with us.
Yeah,
so,
it's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I ask everyone that comes onto the podcast, Porchia, what does success mean to them? So what does success mean to you?
Wow, success to me, it's what I'm doing. I'm so grateful to, be doing the work that I'm doing. And I really feel that I'm fulfilling my higher purpose, and I'm grateful to the filmmakers of Heal Documentary that made such a wonderful movie that teaches, people about the power of the mind to heal the body, and that they're not victims. They don't have to be victims. That, is a choice regardless of a traumatic past. Traumatic past can be healed, and so I just am very grateful for the success I'm experiencing with my work, the success I have in relationships, and the depth and quality of relationships that I have in my life that are amazing.
And the difference you're making across the world.
Difference, yeah, really, truly.
Just very quickly, how did the Netflix documentary come about?
Oh, very synchronistically. It's very interesting because I met my client on the street while I was door knocking at UCLA Medical Center, kind of trying to convince doctors that dealt with patients that had stress-related disorders that my holistic stress reduction program could help them, help their patients. And wasn't getting very far. This was, how many years ago? I don't know, 6 years ago, something like that. And they weren't open to that conversation yet. And anyway, I saw this woman on the street, and she was standing there with a guy. She looked visibly upset. I think I gave her a card, introduced myself, and then I went back into the offices. And when I came out, they were still there. And the man she was there with came up to me and said, "Would you talk to us for a minute?" And I didn't know that, what was wrong at that time, but I shared a little bit more about how I work. And anyway, I left, never heard from this woman until about 3 months later. And she called and she said, "Oh, I've been diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer, and now I want to make peace with the possibility of my dying. I'd like to work with you." So Elizabeth allowed us, not knowing what the outcome of her process was going to be, she allowed us to document all of her sessions. So I had a camera rolling for each of the 2-hour sessions I had with her over a long period of time. And when she got the all clear, I wanted to make a documentary film called Messengers of Hope. And that was about Elizabeth's story, what she did holistically to help her heal. And then there was another project called Chronicles of Hope, where I wanted to bring in other types of practitioners, nutrition, and other things that Elizabeth did as well. So I have no experience in filmmaking, and I was reading filmmaking for dummies and going to film festivals, meeting other documentary filmmakers, finding out what does a producer do. I have no idea. And, so it was networking, trying to find people to help me with this project, students, whatever. My projects, Messengers and Chronicles of Hope, got put on the shelf for about 2 years because I had to move house and my business and split up in a relationship. And so 2 years later, I got a phone call from one of the people I had networked with, and she introduced me to the producers of Heal documentary. And she said that they were working on this film and that they were looking for a cancer patient's story to follow. And I already had a lot of perfect footage for that project. So that's how that came about. It was all a synchronistic meeting on the street, and and not knowing how to make a film, but having the intention and taking the steps to do it. That's all very important. You can't just pray and hope for something to happen. You have to take action. And so putting into motion that intention, and 2 years later, it showed up in a really fabulous way.
Absolutely. I mean, if you haven't watched it at home, dear listener, go and watch it, because it's a really eye-opener of a documentary, and some really great stories there of how people turn up. And
it's on Netflix worldwide.
Indeed. Good old Netflix. Cool. So for those at home who potentially want to learn a little bit more about what you do, perhaps get involved, get in touch with you, maybe they're thinking you could help them overcome some of their issues that they're experiencing. I know you hold some retreats. This perhaps is more for our American listeners. Could you give us a little bit more information about that so people can get in contact with you and what they can get out of the retreat?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just Americans that show up. People will fly in to work with me from all over.
Okay.
And so I have a 2-day intensive that's focused on heart and soul-centered communication skills, and it's called Commitment to Love. And this is an intensive 2-day workshop. Right now I have it scheduled for January 18 and 19, 2020. And that is in Topanga, California. I'll be offering this 2-day intensive at a number of other locations throughout the year. So I encourage people to, sign up for my newsletter and check my website for other offerings. I also have a 5-day Life in Balance, Holistic Wellness and Wine Retreat coming up in Southern California, Central Coast Wine Country in Paso Robles, California. We'll be staying at a beautiful resort, a 4-diamond resort called Allegretto Vineyard Resort and Spa. When I do a retreat at a destination, I want to say that the environment in which I do it is very important. So I look for amenities that are going to support the process. And Allegretto has a wonderful spa, so people can receive nurturing therapeutic touch, which can help facilitate inner healing work, which is very important. And also in beautiful wine country, nature plays a really big part of the work that I do. So in Paso Robles and Central California coast, it's beautiful. And the addition of wine is a little different for me. I'm doing this for the first time, and it'll probably turn into an annual offering. I happen to like great food and wine, and also wine, a little bit of wine, moderate, right? 1 to 2 glasses of wine actually helps facilitate some of the healing because it loosens up those old, deep-grooved neural pathways, the habitual way of thinking and behaving, and kind of allows for new information to come in and a willingness. It maybe allows for some willingness to look at new perspectives. So this is a little bit of an experiment, but I think it'll be really great, and it's a great way to meet like-minded people that are interested in personal growth and enjoying great farm-to-fork cuisine and wine pairings. And then I've got an annual 7-day retreat in Aspen, Colorado, and that is called Life in Balance, and that's holistic wellness and outdoor activities in nature. So again, nature is such an important part of the healing process, and the Aspen retreat, it combines outdoor activities such as hiking and cycling and a silent Vipassana horseback ride. These outdoor activities are helping to move that low vibration stuck energy and limiting beliefs, physically out of the body. So this is a retreat that's very active outdoors, and it takes place in September. This year it's going to be September 19th to the 25th in the fall, when the fall colors are coming out in Aspen. And, we spend a lot of time outdoors with this retreat, and doing the inner work at the same time, learning about, the techniques to reduce mental, emotional stress, learning the heart and soul-centered communication skills, and having a lot of fun.
That sounds awesome. So
yeah.
How do people get in contact with you? Perhaps they've been inspired by what you've been saying today. Perhaps they want to get some more information about the retreats. How do they get in contact with you and find out more info?
Yeah, so please go to my website, which is www.porchiaswish.com, and that's spelled Porchias as in Sam, and then wish.com. I can sign up for my newsletter, and I have a lot of information in each newsletter about holistic wellness and upcoming retreats and offerings. I also want to say that I'll be offering an online courses and workshops as well later this year. I don't have the date set up yet, but if anyone is interested in that, to reach out to me. Also in an email, which is my first name, Dianne, DIANNE @porchiaswish.com. And so I'll be having these workshops, and some of the workshops will be geared towards people that are in the professional wellness field. I've had a lot of requests of people that want to learn my holistic approach, because I don't know anyone else that's kind of doing the stuff that I am. So they want to learn this, and so I'll be offering a course for that at some time, as well as workshops, online workshops for people that are struggling with a certain illness or disease, or just wants to work with and do some personal growth.
That sounds awesome. So I'll also put the link in the podcast info so people can check it out for themselves as well, which would be great. So Dianne, I'd like to thank you so much for your time today. Really, really do appreciate it. I know you're a busy lady, and I wish you all the best helping people as you have done in the past. And please, keep doing the work you're doing, because it's making a big difference in people's lives.
Yeah, it is. So thank you very much, Angelos. Good to meet you.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Right, guys. Well, you've heard from Dianne today. Perhaps you've been inspired by what she's talked about. Maybe some of her stories have resonated with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So please reach out at hello@yoursuccesspodcast.com, or reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're everywhere. So thanks again, Dianne. I've been Angelos, and see you again on the next exciting episode of Your Success Podcast.
You have been listening to Your Success Podcast. Click subscribe for more incredible content. More details can be found at www.yoursuccesspodcast.com.